We would like now to invite Dr. Desmond Biddulph, who is the president of the Buddhist Society in the UK, which celebrated the 90th year of its existence recently. Dr. Biddulph has an association with Buddhism for a long time, and as an allopathic Western medical practitioner, he went on to develop a keen interest in holistic and complementary medicine, in addition to working in psychiatry and psychotherapy. These are the two branches that he actually specializes in currently. And it must also be said that Dr. Biddulph has authored several books, and two of them are very well known and have received excellent reviews, namely The Pearls of Wisdom and The Teachings of the Buddha. So with such an impressive credential, I have no doubt that Dr. Biddulph's contribution this afternoon on the subject, a hero of our times, is worth listening for and will be most interesting and illuminating. Dr. Biddulph.
Venerable members of the Sangha, distinguished guests, friends in the Dharma, and everyone who's come today. So first of all, before talking about this very great man, just say a few words of thanks, and that's to everyone involved in the arrangement of this day. I gave a talk a year ago, about Dharmapala, and Sila Wimala approached me afterwards and said, "Do you think we could do something together, the Buddhist Society, next year?" I said, "I think that's a terrific idea." And since then, there's an enormous amount of work has been done. It's been done continuously. There's been a meeting, certainly from the Buddhist Society, with Louise Marchant from our office has been down here and at the Vihara, and the management committee of the Vihara, and all sorts of other people have worked incredibly hard and very long hours to make this wonderful day of celebration. However, we'll better get down to, and I'm going to probably be repeating myself a little bit. I want to talk a bit about his actual life and achievements. It's a great opportunity to do this, and I would like to just mention really three important, because in every event, there's more than just one thing that causes a person to do things or anything to happen. It's all causes and conditions. We as Buddhists know this. Causes and conditions come together and they create a situation where things can happen. Were it not for the fact that Ceylon was a colonial country, perhaps this would never have come about. Perhaps it was because he hadn't been seen by the missionaries and taught by the missionaries, he'd never have come to the West. Causes and conditions bring things to come about. This was so in the life of Shakyamuni Buddha and also in the life of Dharmapala. We know he was born Don David Hugh-Avatarana on the 17th of December 1864, and he changed his name to Anagarika Dharmapala, the homeless defender of the Dharma, when he was in his early 20s. He was the first real Buddhist international missionary to the West, with perhaps the exception of D.T. Suzuki, who taught on 3 continents, Asia, North America, and Europe. He was a social reformer who promoted the education of women at a time when that was far from usual. He was an educationalist who believed in the power of a liberal and scientific education to not only transform lives, but also liberate and substantially improve them. He believed and struggled for the independence of Sri Lanka against the colonial powers of the day. Through his belief in the supreme value of the heritage of the Sri Lankan people in their own religion, Buddhism, which they had brought to Sri Lanka more than 2,000 years before, had preserved the language, the teachings, and the practice through living it ever since. He set up the Mahabodhi Society with Sir Edwin Arnold, author of The Light of Asia, in 1891, the same year as the death of Helena Blavatsky. Edwin Arnold was himself an ardent student of Buddhism and had studied under Sri Lanka's greatest scholar of the time, Weligama Sri Sumangala Mahathira. so that the ancient pilgrimage sites in India would be restored and made accessible to Buddhists and pilgrims from all over the world, and that Buddhism should be brought back to the country of its birth, that is India. As evidence of his work, the Dharma Chakra, the wheel of the Dharma, is now on the Indian flag, and Ashoka's Sarnath pillar capital is on the official seal of India, as well as the Mathura standing Buddha is in their houses of parliament. The Ambedkar movement and mass conversion to Dalits is part of this heritage. Study of Pali and Sanskrit has made enormous studies and is part of Buddhist studies in most major universities throughout the West. The building of the modern Nalanda University at the site of the ancient place of learning bears witness also to an appreciation of Buddhist cultural heritage. In India, the Mahabodhi Society has a dozen centers in Calcutta, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, Sanchi, New Delhi, Lucknow, Mumbai, Lumbini, Ajmer, Madras, and Bangalore. In the US, there's New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Wisconsin. In Japan, Tokyo, Nagoya, and Atami. In Korea, Ghana, and Taiwan. And he, together with Henry Steele Olcott, died in 1907, with whom he worked incessantly, founded over 300 schools in Sri Lanka. This is just one life. And where the holy Buddhist sites are now part of the growing economy of India, attracting many thousands of pilgrims and tourists from all over the world. Well, it's really quite breathtaking, isn't it? He died on the 29th of April in 1933, Sri Devamita Dhammapala. He was ordained in 1931, and he was possibly the first Buddhist monk to have been ordained in India in probably 700 years. Quite an extraordinary story. His most important and enduring contribution to India and Sri Lanka was the fact he made them aware of their Buddhist heritage that had gone to sleep and was by and large in a moribund way. And the fact that we're here today bears witness to the fact that the relentless work, and his work was relentless. And those of you who have seen the exhibition, that word keeps coming up again and again, that relentless force forward, which was unstoppable, self-sacrifice of Anagarika Dhammapala continues and endures and is alive and well today. He was born on the 17th September 1864 to wealthy parents. He received his education through attending missionary schools, as was the custom for the sons of the privileged. He first attended Christian College, St. Benedict's, and then St. Thomas's. He then went on to Colombo Academy. These missionary schools gave him a very thorough grounding in Western education and science, as well as the Bible, and he's said to have known by heart much of it. Genesis, Deuteronomy and Kings, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, as well as the 4 books of the evangelists in the New Testament by heart, not just, lip service to it. He knew them by heart. And I must say, this is really an important thing that inspires me, is that, well, first of all, unless you really understand or have read the texts of other religions, you're not really properly educated. Unless you've looked and read through the Quran, the Bible, Hindu texts, you're not properly educated. Not anymore, not in the culture in which we live. But this was many, many years ago. This was more than, almost 150 years ago when he himself did that. So he was well-versed in sciences and up-to-date modern education, as well as in the religion of his colonial masters. So I think that is something that we should do. We should study the text of other religions. We should get to know them well. We should be familiar with them. One of the really important things that happened at that time, and is important to this, is that in the 1860s, there were 3 great debates, and the last of them was, of course, the Panadura debate. And this debate was between a very famous savant, Buddhist savant, and a Christian pastor. And it was received all over the world, and it was read. And it's particularly read in America, where it was taken up by Olcott and Madame Blavatsky. And they founded eventually the Theosophical Society in 1875. And it's interesting, because they formed it to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity without race, distinction, creed, sex, caste, or color, to encourage the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science, and to investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in man. And I suppose that is the one thing which we as Buddhists can say that we are able to do. This is one of the great tools that has been given us through the sutras. It's the exploration of what it is really to be human being, and to really profoundly explore that, the ground of our own being. And although this was enshrined in the Theosophical text, the Theosophical declaration, if you like, it is actually very much part of what it is to be Buddhist. And although the Theosophical Society has now faded away and is a sort of little light in the distance, it was really through the Theosophists and through the work of Olcott and Blavatsky that Dhammapala was introduced to a much, much wider audience. He left school in 1883, went to Ajah with Madame Blavatsky, and on his return to India, he took up residence in the Theosophical Society. And on Olcott's return to Sri Lanka in 1886, the same year as he heard of his success in the civil service exams, he decided to change his name to Anagarika Dhammapala, the homeless one, defender of the Dharma, and he set out with Olcott on a tour of Sri Lanka, which was a revelation to him. And I'm quoting Ananda Gurugay here. Ananda Gurugay was going to be here with us today. He was a great son of Sri Lanka, and he died very recently in an airplane in America this August. And I quote really what he said. He realized that the greatness of a nation depended not on the comfort of the few urban families, but on the happiness and contentment of the masses that form the nation's backbone. He dreamed of a day when the Sri Lanka would be independent, the religion of the people restored to its pristine glory, the simple, unaffected ways of the Sinhala recognized and upheld, and the people made enlightened participants of the scientific and technological achievements of modern times. With this in mind, he began a life of incessant activity to achieve these ends. And now, I would say that that mission has still not been thoroughly accomplished, not just here, but everywhere throughout the world. A lot of work we need to do, all of us who are interested in humanity and interested in the welfare of others. We need to pursue that. I'll take up the story because in 28th of September 1926, Dhammapala had been in communication with our founder, Mr. Christopher Humphreys, and in his letter to him, he said, you know, I am worried about Buddhism in Sri Lanka, and you know, we owe you a debt, and one of the things we could repay you with is the gift of the Dharma. And we think that because there are people who are interested in Buddhism in the UK, your interest in it will feed back to our own country and will contribute to Buddhism in Sri Lanka. And so he came, and it's very interesting reading Humphrey's diary of the period. 28th of September, 1926, historic meeting, 42 present, including many press to receive Venerable Anagarika Dhammapala, Francis Payne and the Buddhist League, members of the ULT and the Blavatsky Association and the Buddhist Lodge in force. Began with a reading from A Voice of the Silence, then took pencil, and then outlined the position of Buddhism in London today, mentioning the society, the League, the Lodge, and the scattered individuals. Wanted a personality. Anagarika, having worked in the Dharma for 40 years, was coming to us for 2 years. We awaited his requirements. He spoke at length, very discursively, very irreverently, full of praise of Christianity and scorn of Christians, full of quips and jokes and stories, but little by little outlining the Dharma. Then he became more personal on the self-abnegation line. And a wonderful specimen he is. We had not met him at Victoria the night before. 25 strong and summoned press. Wherefore they arrived in force. Viewing is tonight. A renaissance is born, as ever on the ATS roof. The date above is interesting. Then he goes into little numerical things. NB, he puts at the end of his diary entry, Making history is great fun, but very tiring. So, that's how it began. And were it not also, I should say, for the great help that he had from Mary Elizabeth Foster, a woman who he met on board ship, Honolulu. And the interesting thing about the meeting with Mary Foster was she didn't approach him and say, Anagarika, what is the meaning of life? She approached him and she said, Anagarika, I have a real problem with my temper. And I think that's very, very touching, because this is where really what Buddhism is actually about. Something that actually helps us in our everyday life with our emotions. And because this is what causes all our problems. It's the emotions, the emotional uprush, and the things that the emotions do, how they take hold of us, lead us astray, and get us into terrible trouble. And he obviously helped her a lot because she gave him an enormous amount of money. And so, from then on, the Buddhist Vihara was founded. And it's been a wonderful thing that it's been here all those years. It's had 3 extremely gifted abbots in my own life, the Venerable Saddhatissa, Venerable Vajrayana, and Venerable Sila Vimala. And we at the Buddhist Society have the great honor of receiving Venerable Sila Vimala every Wesak, and we have a joint celebration together. But there's more to it than that, because although that was a beacon of Buddhism in the West, it nevertheless, by its presence in the UK, seeded the ground because other Buddhists were to follow. It created an environment in which people got used to Buddhists. They thought, well, they're okay. They don't seem to be giving too much trouble. I don't see any idolatry here. And it's quite amusing. Won't keep you long, but I read a very interesting entry here from The Spectator. This was when Anagarika first appeared in London. Last month I heard a tall priest, referring to Anagarika, dressed in saffron robes, of an Oriental ascetic attempt to convert an American audience to Buddhism. A few days ago I saw him again in London and learned of his object in coming here. His project is to establish a Buddhist missionary center in England. Before taking my seat in the town hall, I had looked around the hall and observed that the gathering was composed chiefly of that curious type of citizen with lofty brow but vacant eye. But for an hour, not a move or a cough from the audience. Here was a man with a message. He delivered it erect, composed, master of himself, and his hearers with the art of an orator and the dignity of a priest to whom the world is nothing. How will his audience take him in England? Can the austere and bloodless precept of a Buddhism gain a foothold in this land of beer and beef? Anagarika Dhammapala will create few eddies in the spiritual life of this country, for his teaching is too alien to our mental habits. But he should be heard by those interested in Eastern faith, for as a teacher of them, he is as authentic as he is eloquent. Well, I think the land of beer and beef rather likes Buddhism, actually. We get on very well with Buddhism. We like it a lot. We find it practical, useful, helpful, inspiring, and transforming. And it's just the beginning, isn't it? 150 years, and here we all are together. It would be absolutely unheard of and unthought of. And we do take our place along with all the other faiths. And it is hoped that Buddhism will continue to go outwards, really, through the practice of the individual, and through the warmth of heart which arises. As it says, beyond the difference of caste and color and faith and all the rest of it, that community of feeling amongst people will spread and will catch on. And that, as Buddhists, is all we can really do. But there are things that are happening. There's a chaplaincy movement. There's this sort of meditation sort of school that's got into psychiatry now, the mindfulness movement that seems to be making a great deal of difference. But maybe those are fads, we don't really know. And there's sometimes criticism, there should be more Pali, there should be more Abhidhamma, and so on. Well, maybe there should. But the really important thing is that we follow, and step by step, the simple Buddha's teaching, the middle way, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path. And to have the Sangha here in the UK, who are such examples to us all, is a truly inspiring thing. And if anything can be said for Dharmapala, that this is one of the things he truly achieved. And they've been an inspiration to us all, and we hope they'll continue to do so for many centuries to come. Thank you very much.